right, welcome to the Center for Diversity Leadership, where we are supporting school leaders together across the nation as they create school cultures that ensure all students are seen, valued, celebrated, and heard. I am Xavier Reed,
And I'm Dr. Ryan Daniel.
and we are your fellows in this work. Today, we are going to focus our conversation on how leaders can be intentional about their hiring practices during this hiring season. Many of us have gone through the process of finalizing our budgets, getting our staffing, and now looking for candidates to fill opportunities out in our school buildings. Hiring can always be twofold. You may be mourning the loss of an impactful person that's in your school building due to them taking a new opportunity, which we all support. And at the same time, it's a chance to fill an important void for your team. I think in both of these situations, it creates different feelings and different things that you are navigating, as a school leader. Ryan, I'm curious, when you have an open position in your building, how do you evaluate the needs? How do you evaluate that next step?
Oh gosh, the first thing I do is I look at the class. I look at the students and like their needs and what type of teacher they need in front of them. Like, do they need a teacher that has a lot of structure and management? Do they need someone very innovative and creative? Do they need someone that really cannot move forward if their like social emotional needs are not met? And um and from there start filling the need. I think often times, and that's something that has shifted in my leadership from me being a first year principal to now me wrapping up my 8th year, is that I thought I needed to look for who was the strongest in content. And
Mm,
I realized that I was doing it so wrong. And I needed to evaluate what it was that our school was missing and that what our students needed. And that really helped me kind of evaluate. But then I also survey my staff and ask, like, what is missing from our team? What don't we have? What experiences don't we have? What is a voice that is missing from the conversation? And that allows me to have buy-in with my staff because I'm asking them who they feel would be best, a part of our school family. And so I think as we are kind of getting into knee deep into hiring season, like really looking at what your students need and not just filling the academic gap of whatever that content, like you need an algebra teacher, you need a third grade, reading teacher, but like what does that teacher like really look like?
yeah,
What about
yeah.
you?
No, I like what you said. I actually wrote that. I wrote it down. Dr. Daniel is dropping gems. Write it down. But I like the fact that you survey staff to get that input. I'm sure you probably bring staff to the table as well, maybe in interviews where they get an opportunity to give their feedback as well. Yeah, I think this question is definitely a bigger question. It's an important question because evaluation looks different for different positions and different parts of your building, different situations. One school year you may be looking at it, entirely different than the next school year potentially. I think there has to be some consistency in there. For me, I'm always looking on. I'm looking at balance. How can we find balance? Because in the past, I think when I've seen teams that are a little bit unbalanced, it might be because there's too many alphas on one team. It might be because maybe one team doesn't have, as much experience just with like some of the interpersonal relationships that happen, whether it's with colleagues or with students and families as well. And at the middle school level, we that even that word team is like triple layered because if you're a teacher, you have your PLC team that we think about, and we want good work to be happening in your PLC. But you also have we call them color teams, but your grade level team of your core content area colleagues or different core content area colleagues. So that's another team that's important because they all share the same students. And so when we talk about the experience that students have going from all four of those teachers, we want them to have positive experiences between all four. If, for instance, if there is, one or two areas where a child is being really impacted in a negative way, it puts the other two teachers in an awkward position. And that's something where, as administrators, we have to step in. Something I learned about in a previous district that I worked in, and what it was very, it was something that we kind of lived by when hiring, was some of the work that Patrick Lencioni did in his book, The Ideal Team Player. And so in his book, The Ideal Team Player, he talks about candidates and the ideal team player having a balance of being humble, hungry, and smart. And so when I think about candidates, it's always a reflection of kind of gauging, is this person hungry? Is this person going to put the work in? Are they going to be on time to work? Are they going to, be someone who is looking of, how can they contribute on a higher level? Like, is that hunger there to actually create change? Because we have some deficits where we need hungry individuals to create that change. When Patrick Lencioni is talking about smart, he's talking about more so like smart as in people smart. Are you able to read situations? Are you able to understand how to work with someone else and your PLC effectively? Are you able to partner, collaborate? That's what smart means. It's not academically smart. It's not instructionally smart. It's more about people smart. And then one of the ones I think out of the three, maybe the one that is most important to me would be humble and having humility. Um, we work in education. We all have credentials. We all have experiences. We've all been there. We've checked that box. Being able to be approach situations with humility and understand that you may not have the answer and somebody else may have the answer, and they may have more experience and than you, is an important piece to be able to take a step back with. And so being able to show that humility, I think is really important in the role. And so, that those are some things that I think about when trying to evaluate the needs in our building. And just as we've been reflecting a little bit, I think it's we've both been on the other side of hiring as well, and so we've been hired into our positions. And so, one thing that one of our staff has said, is when we were going through the processes, was that they were also interviewing us. They were also wanting to look and see, what it was that we were doing and why they would come over. And so, when you reflect on being hired, to your current position or even any position that you've been in, what were some things that you were thinking about before committing to that position?
Oh God, this is a great question because when I became a principal for the first time, the school that I was chosen to lead was about 75% Hispanic. And I am not bilingual at all. I am a Black girl that it was from the southern part of our county, and they asked me to lead a school that was on the northern part of our county. And I, in the beginning, I second guessed myself. Before, of course, you say you want to say yes to the job. If you This is what you've been working for to become a principal. But I I had to ask myself, did I have the capacity to lead a building that was very, very different than what I was accustomed to. And I had to think about what I needed to be successful, but then what the school needed to be successful. And what gave me the confidence is that I knew my ability to bring like communities together. I knew my ability to, make students, families, communities kind of feel seen and feel valued. And I told myself, okay, if I led like that, like if I that anything that I lacked, I would be able, to learn. And yeah, I really think that that kind of made me successful, is that I didn't come in thinking I knew it all, like around, how to support English language learners as a school principal. You know, how to bring communities that had so much unrest and strife against one another. Like, how do I bring those communities together where they could hear what each other had, and what their values were? And I remember that those are things that I thought about, really before committing, to it. And because it was shared with me that the groups of um, two racial groups in the building had so much, challenges with working together. And so I had to really reflect on things that I could do to bring the community together. And I think that that is a great question. I know that when I interview people for our school, I always say to them, my last question is, you know, what would we be missing if we don't hire you? And it's a great opportunity for someone to share like the great things about themselves, right? And I always love asking that question to interested candidates because their face lights up, right? Maybe I asked them a question before, around English language learners or around, you know, classroom management. Maybe that's something that wasn't as strong for them, but then I asked them, what would we be missing if we did not hire you? And they get to share, oh, I'm very creative, or, you know, I do a really good job with parent communication. And for me, there's like, oh, I need that. So going back to that last question of like, how do you evaluate the needs? I think that when you ask yourself kind of like, what is it that you have about yourself that would be great for a school? I think that that allows you to be more, marketable, more approachable, and desirable as a candidate. And then I also think about before I said yes to, um, the transfer to a new school, that I asked myself, could I do this again? Like, that was something that I had to ask myself. I think when you become a principal again and you start over at a new school, a new community, you're asking yourself, do I have the capacity like to start over? Like, do I have the capacity to go back to ground zero and be a first year principal again? To so to speak, you know, I kept calling myself a first year principal, just a little bit smarter this time because I had, you know, I did it before.
Yep.
But I think that's a great question. You know, like, what about you? I know you have, you know, you've grown up in your state and, familiar, but like, what were some things that you thought about before committing, to your position?
Yeah, I think for me, I think the biggest piece that I reflected on was, you know, I would say as a black man going into the position as principal and being in leadership, um, the most important thing was who was going to be my support, who was going to be, who am I, you know, is the person that I'm reporting to going to support me in this position? Because I knew, you know, that there was going to be times where I needed someone to stand in the fire with me. I needed someone to be there to have my back when things are being said, you know, that don't hold truth or are more based in bias or opinions. And so for me, that was really important because I feel like you know, as we all have done, as you know, we went through our preparation programs and going back to school and you know all of these different things that we've juggled. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work that we do, and I think far too often I've seen situations where um, someone is not supported, and shortly after, you know, getting that opportunity, getting the you know the keys to being able to lead a building, that they you know either step down on their own or they you know are pushed out. And so for me, that was something that you know I don't feel like aligns with my why and my you know the reason why I wanted to be a principal. And so I just wanted to make sure that wherever I was going that I felt supported, and that's been you know something that I have really appreciated stepping into this position and been very open about throughout the process. I think that that's key is being transparent, about what it is your needs are before committing. Because, and I appreciate that from teachers or from anybody that's stepping into a position because I would never be able to say that, I didn't know that or I wasn't made aware of that. I'm aware of those things. And so that's an important piece. I think connected to that is also what are the pillars and what are the values of the school district that I'm going to, step into. I think it's less in this position as principals, it's less about the school itself because we're being hired to come into a space and be able to lead that space and transform it. It's good to know the history. It's good to know where they've been at, but that's not going to be where we're going. Where we're going is going to be led by you, the principal, and by your team. And so for me, what's more important is okay, what's the overarching vision and for our schools, what is the type of support that we're going to be getting and direction that we're going to be getting for our school. So for me, those were the biggest things. Those are the most important pieces, and something that I really was looking at before committing to a position. And I think kind of closely tied to that is it's important, to your point, you've talked about being in schools where you have 75% Hispanic speaking students. I think right now in your building, you have a mix, of Spanish speaking students and also, African American Black students. But as far as, having that diversity reflected in your school building staff, we know that that's important, for the experience of students. There's data around it. There's data around families feeling more comfortable walking into school buildings and feeling a part of the school. So, how are you intentional about that when you're hiring for positions? Where does that lie?
I make sure that those that are in the interview process with me that are at the table identifying the new candidate, that there's diversity reflected in that. Because that helps me not stay in one lane or lens. Now there are three different lens at the table. So, not only just diversity in culture, but diversity in the building. Like where do you sit at in the building? I've had everyone from my secretary to be on a interview panel, to my Italian teacher, to my ELD teacher, to my PE teacher, right? Because I think that when we always say that we're intentional about making sure diversity is reflected, but if I just show up by myself as a Black leader, then I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I mean, I know that I'm a woo. I can garnish anyone to, kind of come to our building and be the cheerleader. But it's going to be important for them to say they see the diversity that we currently have in the building. But then I also look at what is missing. What is missing on our staff. Right now, I'm being very intentional of hiring bilingual staff members so that my secretary is not the only staff member that is bilingual for our parents and for our students. So that's particularly like something as I'm going into this next hiring season that I'm looking for. But then even the diversity of I'm looking for different languages and different experiences and backgrounds. Are you from Maryland? Are you from another state? Being able to give other experiences to our students. But I think the place that I'm the most intentional about first is making sure that my interview panel reflects the diversity of our school so that it can attract more diversity for our building.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I think for us, what we try to do in being intentional is, and we have a different challenge in Minnesota than down south. We have a lack of candidates, and we have, I believe, it's less than 0.5% of current teachers in the Minnesota school system are Black. And so there's a challenge of being able to even have candidates. And so, there's more work to be done. And that's something that I'm always encouraging, former students that I've had or former, kids that I used to coach in sports, go into teaching, go into education. We need you. Like we absolutely need you. And you're key to being able to close that gap. I forget the percentage, but there's I want to say more than 50% or more than like 75% students, if they have at least one Black teacher in the 12 years that they're 12, 13 years that they're in the K-12 system, they're more likely to graduate and go to college. And so, just thinking about that and thinking about, the needs there, um, I would say, there's been a very intentional approach that we've taken to just be more diverse. Walking into this building my first year, I was the only Black employee in the school, the only Black principal that they've ever had at the school. They've had some assistant principals, but not the true leader, in this building. And so, you fast forward 2 years later, and we have now, I think, 13 or 14 staff members who are Black African American, and even more, staff members of color that are in our building, and that is, with being intentional with going out and being able to get the word out about the things that we're doing, the vision that we have. Um, I feel like that's been an important piece about what we do. This is important work, and these are the kids that we need to support the most when you look at our school data. And I know that we've had a lot of great feedback from families and from people in the community about that intentionality that we've shown. I have a sticky note that sits above my desk, and I made it. It was 10 or 12 years ago that I had written it down. And so it says that we need to increase that diversity in schools, but we also need to increase the cultural competency in our schools as well. And so this work isn't going to be done by only people of color. This work is going to also need to be done by our white colleagues as well. And that's an important piece to this, is that we have to continue to grow in terms of understanding equity, in terms of understanding diversity, in terms of understanding inclusion, so that we can get to our goals. We have a couple more questions, and the next one is around community and how do you see yourself as a community builder, and how do you build that amongst your staff to help to retain staff in your building?
I know for me, the biggest thing is like taking team building beyond just, the check-ins, but really being intentional what like that team building time looks like, and making sure that it's structured, doing a lot of withdrawals and deposits, right? I put a lot of deposits into my teachers so that when we ask for withdrawals from them, that we've placed a lot. So one of the biggest ways that we've built community is making sure our like collaborative planning time is very protected. That time of teachers to collaborate together, to have conversations, that's protected and structured. But then also making sure everyone is celebrated, making sure all of the diverse needs of our building are being celebrated beyond the just their months, but making sure that if there is an event coming up, that we're supporting them. Like for example, my PE teacher, he runs marathons, and I am very particular about when he is getting ready for his marathon that he does a mini marathon here in the school, and we're celebrating him and encouraging him. We're shouting him out, using my staff newsletters as an opportunity to each week shout out some staff members or teams that have kind of gone above and beyond. We have our own the staff, they shout out each other, and I think that helps people continue to come to stay here. Like I recently, because it's hiring season, right? And when I send out emails to interested candidates, I always attach our media kit. And this year in our media kit, I asked the current staff to just simply, what do you love about working here at Fort Foot? And I took some of their responses and I added that into our media kit. So, like, I can tell people that this is the best school, but why don't you hear it from, current staff members and just
Mhm.
listening to some of the things that they share, just, about community, you're not on the island here. There's always somebody to kind of support you if you need some help with something. That kind of affirm that what we're doing here is working when it comes to building that community. What about you? How I know you're in the middle school, so
Right.
staff is something that's like really, really important, but I'm sure turnover sometimes can be.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. For us, it's it could be that. I think share the challenge has been just the size because we're such a big school. We have about 180 licensed and unlicensed staff members in the building. So that can be a challenge because you have different communities of like the sixth grade team, the seventh grade team, the eighth grade team, and they're in different parts of the building. But I would say the approach over the last 3 years has centered around community and building community with one another, building community in your classroom, building community as a school. That has been, I think, if you were to ask anybody, what is a pillar to the focus of our leadership in this building has been around, it's centered around community. And so, something that we've adopted this year is we have, you know, there's the term, give people their flowers while they can still smell them. And so, we have a part of our staff meetings is giving people their flowers. And so we have actual flowers that we bring in every staff meeting. And if a staff is highlighted in the previous meeting, then they get to give a flower to somebody else in front of the staff at the next meeting.
I'm stealing that.
Yeah, so we've been doing that all year, and I think it's created a really positive vibe in that space. And then it also allows for people to shout people out that they're not really able to because they don't see each other on a regular basis besides a staff meeting. So that's been good. We also have had some really, great events that build community with students and staff. We had our a prep rally this year. We also, one of the big things that we have is a student versus staff basketball game where everybody's a part of that. And we also we got T-shirts this year that say my school's Central Middle School, and so we have the Central community on our shirts. And so that's been a huge thing. But it's something that we have to constantly be aware of. It's not a one and done. It is something that you have to constantly do. So with our final thoughts, what is some advice that you would give leaders in supporting diverse staff in their school buildings?
I think we've touched on a lot, but the biggest one is, being intentional about who is at the hiring table and on the interview panel, assessing your school needs from your students, social emotional needs to your staff, like what kind of partner does a particular teacher need? I think that's going to be really important as you're building teams of teachers because oftentimes we forget that when we bring teacher teams together, it's almost like an arranged marriage. So, if you're looking for to fill a fifth grade vacancy and you currently have two fifth grade teachers in the building, have those fifth grade teachers, on your interview panel because they'll be really great to help you determine like what it is that they're missing on their team. But being just very intentional about looking at your needs and looking beyond content, beyond academic, and then also making sure your interview panel is diverse.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, the two words that come up for me is intentionality and support. And so I would give the advice of just being intentional, going into those hiring conversations and this season, and then also making sure that once you hire, that you're supporting and finding ways to support, those individuals in your building. Once again, we appreciate you for tuning in to the Diversity Leadership Podcast. We hope that this end of the school year is a positive one for you. This will be one of the last podcasts that we have Dr. Ryan Daniels on, as she'll be exiting the fellowship at the end of this school year. I wanted to see if Dr. Daniels had anything that she wanted to share.
No, it has been an amazing ride with the centers for advancing leadership, and particularly the Center for Diversity Leadership. Being able to connect with school leaders across the world on how you are promoting diversity, promoting equity, making sure that we are meeting your needs and curating content that has been useful for your instructional capacity. It's just truly been an honor. I have gained more principals than I ever had before through this, and I'm excited to continue to see and watch from the stands of how Xavier and our new fellow will take this center, to the moon. So just super excited. I hope everyone has a great summer and enjoy all of the professional learning opportunities that we will have for you throughout the summer, including our United Conference and things that we'll have planned for the upcoming school year. So I'm signing off for the last time as the fellow for diversity leadership, and excited to support Xavier.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.